All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not even going to welcome you back because it has been such a long period of time that I'm probably just reintroducing us at this point. This is the Natty News Daily podcast. I am James. I am one of three hosts, and I am joined today by Brandon Lirio. Honestly, like I said, like I should probably reintroduce myself, but I'm going to reintroduce you. You've been on the podcast a couple times. People probably know you within the space, even though there's been some time since the last competition. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. I've been kind of egging you to get back on stage just because you were honestly, and I'm already off on a tangent here. You were one of the athletes when I was first starting to compete that you were very active on Reddit, which is kind of where I was getting some of my early information,
Yeah.
and like kind of went to you. You were in the classic physique division that I was starting to compete in, and then like in my naivety was like, that's the guy. I gotta like match his physique. Little did I know like my genetics just probably aren't going to allow that. And you were like a multi-time world champion, Olympian, all these other things. But I was chasing you. So yeah, this is like full circle to like be a peer of yours now, have these conversations with you. So, Brandon, very briefly, because I know it's extensive, give the viewers, give the listeners a rundown of your competitive resume, who you are, what you do, then and now.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just got to say, man, because it's been a minute since I competed, just to hear people still say like, "Hey, I followed you on Reddit and you were the guy, and I wanted to beat you." Like that shit was why I competed. So to hear you say that after so many years is like, man, that really was kind of fun, dude. But yeah, as he said, I'm Brandon Lirio. I run a coaching company called Battleground Fitness and a couple of supplement stores that actually sponsor Natty News Daily called Battleground Nutrition Centers. And I've won the Natural Olympia three times. I've won the Natural Universe twice. I've competed in a lot of major shows, including with the INBF, the OCB, the NGA. I've competed with overseas organizations like the GNBF, the SNBF, and the AINBB in Italy. So I've been all over the world. If there's a major title to be won, I married my federation pretty early on in terms of the PNBA, but I've won all of their continental titles, their world title, their universe title, their Olympia title, the whole nine yards. So I was team captain for Team USA for a while, and I've coached countless athletes to both NPC national qualifications, one or two IFBB pros, and then a couple of per division, per federation for the Natties. So I've been around a minute, pushing 40 at this point. So we're getting there, but fitness is still what I do all day, every day. It's still the best part of my day, and now I've got two kids and a dog along with it, so it's just to put on a different hat essentially.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that competitive pedigree is pretty much why we're having this conversation. Because for those that don't know as well, Brandon and I are both involved with the DFBA, which is the Drug Free Bodybuilding Alliance. We're working to create this global community that's, oh man, we'll save that for a different episode. But
Yeah,
just to say, like, we are involved with that heavily. And one of the conversations that we as a group and many others have been having is like, there is this divide currently within the sport where the expectation is athletes come to the US, right? If you are anybody who's anybody, you compete in your regional shows, you compete in your local shows, but the world events, the big events, for the most part, are filtered to the US. Now, obviously, there's the European Championships. PNBA Worlds is hosted outside of the US, but Natural Olympia, WMBF Worlds up until this year, OCB Yorton Cup, like these big titles, it's you got to come to us. And we are working and asking the question, why is that so? And you are somebody, one of very few, who is a US based athlete that has competed frequently abroad. So who else to ask the question to but you? Let's talk through kind of like how that looked for you, how you started even competing abroad. Is it feasible for US athletes to do that? And we'll just kind of like open up that can of worms.
sure. Yeah. So like, what's funny is obviously people know I was in the service for 11 years, so I was stationed over in Germany. But I actually started competing my first ever show. It shows you how small of a world it is too. Was the Orange County Muscle Classic in 2012. And I did not know what I was doing. There was another military member who was stationed in Colorado Springs when I was in California that just kind of helped me like throw a diet together and was like, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. He did it for free, didn't have to. I still think about that kid and I'm like, man, if that was me, I'd have been like, dude, I don't have fucking time for you. I don't even know who you are. And it was just some friend threw us together and he really helped me out. And when I competed there, I competed against, not against, on the same stage with Sadiq Hadzovic, who has switched to classic. And actually, if you've been following him on Instagram, he looks like he's gonna fucking switch into the 212, if you ask me. But that's actually my friend from high school's brother-in-law now here in the state of Connecticut. So it was like a full circle that there's like 7 people in the world, I swear to God. But after that, I moved to Germany. And when my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, when we got off stage, was like, "Hey, so you did your first bodybuilding show? What'd you think about it?" And I was like, "I don't really think it's for me. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it." And then the next year, my friend Adam was like, "Hey, there's this show in Paris that I'm thinking about doing." And what's funny is I haven't heard anything from the Federation recently. It's called Muscle Mania, Muscle Mania and Fitness Universe. And they did a show in France. And I was like, well, listen, I remember what it was like for me to compete in 2012. It was only like a year and a half removed. And I'm like, maybe even less than that, like 8 months. And I was like, I don't love the idea of people going backstage by themselves and just winging it. I'll come help you and I'll compete with you as like a, hey, it's a whatever. And my friend Jess, who I didn't know at the time, was starting a military only competition team to go through Europe to compete. She now is the head dietitian for USC, and she actually was for the Clippers for a while, and she worked for Kobe Bryant at the Mamba Academy. Shout out to Jessica Isaacs. You can follow her on Instagram. She's really good. And she was putting a team together and was like, "Hey, let's meet in Paris and talk it over." And in my head, I'm already like, "Well, I'm not really that good. I was going to retire without ever even starting." So that meeting would become Battleground Fitness. So
Okay.
like happenstance, I went to this Paris show to compete with my friend, and then for 7 or 8 straight years, I never stopped competing, even though I didn't think it was for me. So the first thing I'll say when people say, "Is it feasible?" is like you don't even know what next year is going to look like, which is why when people say, and no shade to any coach that wants you to do this, I've told people, "Hey, you need 2 years to grow." But when someone wins a show and then they go, "I'm going to take 3 years off," I go, "I'll see you in 7." They don't know what's going to happen those 3 years. Like, take it in 5 month, 6 month increments because you don't know what's going to happen. So when I started competing internationally and really traveling, was after I'd already reserved myself to the fact of like, yeah, I don't really think bodybuilding's for me. And then it became my entire career. And let's face it, pretty much my entire personality. So to really go back and think about it was like, I didn't see the competition space as do I travel to compete? When I was living in Germany, you live in this weird state of like, there's so many countries within a 1 day's drive. I'll just check all of them for bodybuilding shows and I'll just go do them. And I didn't even know about the federation. I wound up marrying the INBA until I competed with the AINBB. And they scooped me up to be part of Team Italy first because I was technically Italian by blood and I lived in Europe. So they were like, "Hey, we can include this person in our Italian team." And so I competed with Thomas Vicentin and my good friend who was their team captain, Luca Brocatelli, in Italy. And they were like, "Hey, you've swept all of our shows, come compete with us when we go compete at this INBA European Championship." And I won that and then won the Amateur Olympia a week later. So I should preface that by saying for my weight division, and then I lost the overall. I was in second place. But um, it really just came down to when I traveled overseas and when you really have a passport and you just have, I had 30 days of leave every year. I was just like, okay, how many shows can I fit into a couple of years? And it just kind of spun from that. So when people ask me like, "Hey, how do you get into competing internationally?" I first start by telling them like, you got to stop pretending like it's a different thing. It's just longer travel and you have to understand for your food, for your water, for your capabilities of getting your pump up stuff there and your tanner and the language barrier. Like, yeah, there is hurdles to be had. But how many times are you trying to reach out to an American promoter that's one state away and they won't fucking email you back? Like, how is that any different than not speaking the same language? It's not. It wasn't to me. So that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, and the logistics of travel we all know in Europe are dramatically easier, right? Like I've studied abroad, I've been abroad a couple different times. Like you can get a flight to a different country for $100.
Yep.
Not necessarily the case in the US. So for those that are saying like, well, that's cool if I'm over there, but what about like me? And we'll get into this in more detail, I'm sure, like
Mhm.
as you work your way through the ranks of the federations. But let's just say like big picture, what would be your first step? I'm an American athlete. Maybe I'm, moderately experienced, so I know what the federations are. How do you work your way to justifying traveling international if you want to view it that way? If you want to view it as a competitive thing and like you did, like I want to compete at the highest level and be a champion,
Yeah.
but also just like keeping in mind those individuals that are like I need a different neighborhood, right? Like I've been competing against the same guys for forever. Maybe I won't win, but I'm willing to make the commitment and investment to go there to challenge myself against people that are outside of like the norm.
Yeah. So I've said this before, right? As it relates to the fitness industry in general, most of us have dual incomes and nowadays my dual incomes are all related to fitness. So when people say like, well, I have an LLC or I'm a coach or I'm a trainer and I train at this gym, based on the federal tax code, anything that you do with those, employment capabilities, whether it be for advertising, marketing, competing, if that's part of your advertising, that's all tax deductible. So
Mhm.
for me, I said, okay, step number one, how do I mitigate the costs?
Yep.
And mitigating the costs is actually pretty easy when you know on the back end, one, you've got a shot at winning. So you can win some money. It's never going to be enough to get that money back. I understand that. But secondly, at the end of the year, you're still going to be able to tax deduct. When I say everything, I mean if you buy a shirt at the show while you're there, well, that's part of it. If I any meal I eat when I'm over there. So what's really funny is you've a lot of people have heard me say this on podcasts before. If I'm going to tax deduct it, I'll turn it into a vacation afterward, right? Where if the most expensive part of a vacation is lodging and the actual travel to get over there, do it for a reason that has to do with your primary or secondary sources of income, and you can tax deduct that. So what
Yep.
I was doing was basically competing so that I looked fucking shredded all the time. I would go to these beach destinations or whatever. And then I would take a 4 day vacation after the show. So we'd have a couple days beforehand to kind of get the lay of the land, see some local sites. And then the day before and the day of the competition were basically a wash. But then for 4 or 5 days afterward, I would go see stuff and then go home. But everything that wasn't basically a paid for guided tour while I was over there was all tax deductible. So that was first, is mitigate the cost after the fact. Secondly, is mitigating the cost moving into the show. I never understood, even now, when I have competitors that go, hey, I'm trying to budget for these shows, and I go, great, what's the most important thing you need? Well, airfare changes in price and the hotels are changing in price. First of all, if you're a competitor, the first thing you should be doing is looking at, and I hate to give them a shout out, but back when I was competing, they were the only way to do it, was Airbnb, where I now have a full kitchen. I can come and go as I please. Nobody's going to come and fuck with my supplements when they're trying to clean the room or whatever. And I would have a whole place to myself. And then I could get one that was closest to public transit so that I could come and go for $5 instead of pay for a $30 Uber every time I was moving. Then what I would do is also mitigate those costs. If it was cheaper to look on Turo or any, which for those of you who don't know is basically Airbnb for cars, if it was cheaper to get a Turo car for 6 days than it was to get, let's say, two or three Ubers throughout the town, then I would just rent a car. The only time I wouldn't do that is when I was in Japan, if I was in Australia. Listen, I've told people for years I'm the dumbest dude in a room of people who for some reason think I'm smart. If you think I'm gonna figure out left and right hand turns when I'm driving on the no, man, that's not gonna happen. So that was the one that I was like, I'm gonna either have a buddy drive me around or I'm just gonna eat the cost, right?
Yep.
But mitigating those costs over time where I go, okay, I know I'm going to need those two expensive things. I'm going to get those 6 months out. Then 4 months out, I'm going to register for the show. 3 months out, I'll register for the tanner. 2 months out, I'll take a look at what I want to do for food, which I'll get into
Mhm.
the gray area of traveling with your food here as we move forward. But after that, it really does come down to I knew I was going to be traveling a lot. So I kind of did myself a disservice by not getting which nowadays is kind of the norm, get yourself a credit card with rewards on it, where every time I go overseas, you're going to give me my fifth trip for free. Or, if I'm using a rental car company, become a member of the rental car company because they're going to give you rewards and free upgrades and all this other stuff. So kind of bookending it where I'm taking a vacation that technically is mostly tax deductible. I've mitigated how far in advance I'm going to pay for certain things. And then as I'm there, right, I would try to mitigate food costs by operating within the parameters on certain countries by bringing my food with me, whether it be landing in a location first, getting some food, and then taking it to the venue and taking it to my Airbnb. Or, and I'm going to preface this with an enormous asterisk, that what I did back then, because I haven't actually traveled overseas since like 2022, is a little bit different nowadays, but not by much. Unless you're going to a very, and I want to stress this, that there are countries that you should never do this with: Australia, New Zealand, Korea, Japan. Never do this. Island nations that have incredibly specific biodiversity, you will wind up in literal prison if you wind up doing what I'm going to tell you to do. And I didn't do it in those countries. I declared everything. I didn't bring in food. It was just snacks and protein powder because it was too expensive to buy protein over there. But most of the time on those places, I literally was like, I'm just going to have to eat the cost of food and just find a cheap way to do it.
Mhm.
But when I was traveling in between states of the United States or from the United States overseas to countries that weren't as strict agriculturally, I would prep all my food for a week. And I would
Mhm.
take 2 days and put it in my checked bag. I asterisk this by saying, once you go through security, they're going to stop you. Because what they're doing is they see this organic material in your bag that looks just like a bomb, and they want to make sure that that's not what it is. Once they see it's cooked food, they'll tell you to put it back in your bag. You can go. When I land and they say, do you have anything to declare? I would always do research ahead of time and go, okay, what would the fine be if they go, hey, you're not supposed to have this? And generally, I never got caught, so I never had to pay the fine, but it would have been like 80 to 120 euro, and then I'd have to toss the food and then go get more food when I landed. But arguably, I never got caught. And essentially, what I did was prep, pack, freeze. 80% of the meals go into my checked bag where I have it basically around my food as an insulator, and it's already frozen. So by the time I land, even 18 hours later, the shit's still frozen, especially if you put it in an insulated bag around the clothes. And I would travel with 2 days on me just in case I got stuck or my flight got delayed. I would still have enough food where I wouldn't be stuck. Then I'm controlling my food. Now, people might say, okay, great, that's for prep. No, it's also so I didn't have to buy $8 chicken breast at the airport, right? If you're traveling and every meal you're eating is out of your bag until you're done competing, you're not spending money on any more food. Great.
Yep.
So now I'm traveling without an actual food budget. That's awesome. But again, if you're traveling within the continental United States, you could still do that and no one can stop you. As long as it's cooked, packaged correctly, and it's not leaking everywhere, the TSA will let you go. Leaving the United States to go over to Europe, generally they don't really give a shit unless it's raw or you're trying to import it in to sell. And they never stopped me. But you are taking this at your own risk that if they decide to say, hey, this is egregious, we're going to fine you, that is a problem. And again, do not do this in New Zealand, Australia, Japan, any of those island nations. You literally can be fined. I watched a guy try to beat the customs when we were competing as US athletes in Australia. They fined him, I think it was 80 Australian dollars per pack of cigarettes, and he was trying to smuggle 2 cases in. So it was like a, $1,600 fine or something like that. And they put a note on his passport to check him now every time he came in. So don't do that. But again, I'm looking for ways to basically take those costs and go, well, now I'm not paying for food. Now I'm not paying for this. Now I'm not paying for that. And I was willing to take the gamble because I could have paid the fine if I needed to. And that also helped me kind of stockpile where it's like, okay, I'm not paying for 50 things at once. I'm just spreading those costs out. And then I justified it by essentially saying I'm taking my wife somewhere to celebrate afterward for 5 straight days. How many people wind up getting to, have their vacation deducted from their taxes? Not too many people. So that was kind of enough for me. Even when I moved back to the United States, we kind of had already fallen in love with competing, where when I was overseas, I went to compete either as a coach or as an athlete in France, Spain, Italy, Finland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Germany, obviously. And then when I moved back to the States, I've already competed in probably 8 states. I went back to Finland, went back to Italy. I've been to the UK as a judge, and I went to South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and I think that's it for competing. So, 11 to 12 countries competing, but 39 countries traveling over the course of time, you kind of just get used to it, where traveling from here to Florida is kind of not that much different than traveling from here to Iceland. It's just a different flight time, to be honest with you.
Honestly, yeah, yeah. People will lose track of like geographically how massive the United States is.
Yep.
Some of my longest trips, actually, my longest trip thus far, besides going to Denmark, and that was just because crazy layovers, was trying to get to Washington State last year because I had to go from Rochester to Atlanta, which doesn't make sense by the compass, and then
Right.
all the way over to Washington State. And it literally took me an entire day of traveling. It was brutal. But I think this is the part of the episode where I need to tell our listeners consult with your CPA. Neither of us are
Of
accountants.
course. Of
And
course.
really do your due diligence and do your research. So these are all general guidelines
Yeah.
that we may or may not have done. But no, that's massive points. And the thing that you didn't touch on, or you did kind of indirectly, was when you're going through an Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental process, you also have the opportunity to split that cost with other athletes, right? Because
Yeah.
in theory, if you're traveling abroad to compete at this show, it's a larger show. There's probably lots of other international competitors going to that same show. The community is a small community. We're all relatively well interconnected. You know, if you're renting a house for, $1,000 and there's five other athletes that need a place to stay that also want a kitchen, you can drive that cost down just by, fronting yourself and subletting, I guess, if you want to view it that way, or just splitting the cost.
And when we did that, we also were bringing our own tanner with us, where it was like, okay, well, if we pay her 50 € a piece as opposed to the 180 that they want for the official tanner, but she gets a free vacation where we essentially all kind of chipped in, 10, 15 bucks to cover her ticket, and then she could stay in the Airbnb for free. They're getting paid to vacation, and you're saving half the money on your tanner. Now, again, you need to bring a team to do that. But again, these are the things that people don't ask, where it's like, okay, well, maybe there is a group of people going and I should just ask them if I could jump in on it, especially if if you've done this long enough. I knew enough other country competitors that I would ask them, hey, are you bringing a tanner? Hey, are you bringing this? Or if they were living in the country, I would go, hey, I need, pH balanced water, or I need this or that. And I know I'm just going to get this out of the way now because we're very science based coaches. The only reason I'm getting pH balanced water, guys, is not because pH balanced water is magic. It's not. It's bullshit. But what it is water that doesn't have anything in it. So local ordinances of like high amounts of silica, high amounts of calcium. Sometimes that used to give me really bad heartburn when I only had like 8 things in my diet, and I didn't couldn't pose when I had gas or GERD or whatever. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm taking pH balanced water because it's always going to give me the same desired result. And everybody's idea of what pH balanced water is, instead of what spring they're getting spring water from, I never got gastrointestinal problems or acid reflux when I was using pH balanced water. I just want to say that because I'm a science zealot. So for me to be like, get your pH balance, somebody's going to come at me on Instagram. I know it.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And so that's a great framework, right? Those are the ways, all right, how can we budget things out, spread it out across the year? Obviously, you have to be planning in advance, but if you're going internationally from the US, you are planning in advance. Like that's not a spur of the moment thing for the most part. Um, was there a period of time, or was it kind of an expectation? Because like you said, you as you said, married with the PNBA, INBA very early on. You were kind of one of their champions. For those looking for similar routes, was some of that cost offset by the organization, or was that completely all on you?
Yeah, hell yeah. Listen, not enough people, or rather, I should say it the other way. Pretty much everybody is afraid to just ask, right? You know, it really cracks me up where there's so many people nowadays that can't get their narrative right between like, we got to do away with cancel culture, but also fuck this guy. Like, dude, listen, if someone calls you up and they're running a federation and they expect you to be in South Korea in 8 weeks because they know you're ready to compete and you can win, it's nice to say they hand chose you. I was always very much a, hey, you're asking me on basically a 2 months notice to uproot my life and
Mhm.
disappear for a couple of weeks so that I could bring a title home for you and be used as advertising.
Yep.
I'll cover the plane ride, but you got to cover the hotel, or I'll get there, but I'm not going to pay the registration and the tanner fee. Something like that, where you go, I don't mean to offend you. I'm just telling you I don't have the money to pay for all of this. But
Hmm.
you're asking me as an athlete to represent you, then represent me with your wallet. And this
Yep.
is sort of what the DFBA preaches, where we're like, not enough people have asked the question where the federations realize if we're representing you and you expect us to kind of speak in your name and bring a title home to your host country, you should kind of mitigate those costs with us. We're not millionaires. There's very few people who literally make all of their money competing. And it's actually what I tell my competitors when they ask me not just questions about international travel, but natural guys that go, should I compete in the NPC? Now, no shade at the NPC naturals. I hear they're growing. I have no problem with a majority of the things they do. I really disagree with their new ruling about novice classes, but that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But alternatively, I asked them one question. Okay. When I won the Natural Olympia, especially when there were 27 competitors and they already were established pros, I had like a 1% chance of winning, right? Sure,
Hmm.
you stack the deck in your favor by being ready, but realistically, if you take every pro in the federation and you know they all have the opportunity to show up, you give yourself a 1 to 5% chance.
Hmm.
You have to now reduce that by like a factor of 50 if you're the one of, let's say, a genetic outlier who's juicing to do that in the IFBB. So when people say, well, I'm trying to compete where the competition winnings will pay for my house and pay for me as an athlete, I go, do you think that in the next 3 years you could beat Chris Bumstead? And they go, well, no, of course not. And I go, then what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that's not me disparaging you. If you feel you do, I'll help you get there. But the majority of people, when you're self-aware, go, no, I'm decades away from even touching his earliest physique, right? Then you have to say to yourself, getting the money to pay for all of this from either sponsorships alone or winnings that's a pipe dream. Okay.
Yeah.
We all make the most of our money on coaching, on not paying for stuff in the industry because we're sponsored by a supplement company or a clothing company, something like that. That saves you a lot of money. But understand at the same time, if someone's asking you to go represent them, then they should kind of help you cover and mitigate those costs. So
Hmm.
there were times where, especially by the way, if you're a friend of the federation and they're asking you to do a job while you're there, not just compete, and you're not going, well, then I'm not going to pay for the travel there. That's on you,
Yep.
honestly. Like a good friend of ours, Lee Kemp, he asked me to come out and judge for them when actually it was the head federation asked me to come out there. And when Lee found out, I basically paid for a little more than half of it, and the only other half was paid by my athletes I had competing in his show. He gave me the other half. He was like, "You shouldn't be expected to be here without getting paid for your services, especially after they moved me right next to the head judge." Because I just was like, "Hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm into this. I want to help." So I would ask. And if they say no, great. You're in the same spot you were before you asked, but at least you know that you have it in you to go, "Hey, I don't think I can cover all of this, and if you want me to come represent you, I need some help." So there were
And
times when, Denny had covered a hotel room for me or, gave me the registration fee gets a little squirrely because you have to actually be registered for the show. But he would have, let's say, the head sponsor for the show cover my registration, or the tanning didn't matter, so it was like, cool, we'll cover your tanning. A lot of stuff like that. Or
yeah.
even better, ask the federation if you're competing, and if they invite you because they think you want to qualify for their world championship, no problem. But you got to pay my way into worlds if I win, something like that. Just
Mhm.
ask, and if they
Yeah.
get offended, then you should get offended when they ask you if you want to cross over. Then you should get offended when they ask you to do the Open and the Masters. Then you should get offended when they say, well, if you're going to come out to Worlds, you got to go to the Orton. You know what I mean? If they're going to get offended at that, remember that they're the ones getting offended at the same stuff they're asking you to spend money on. And that's
Yeah.
just me being open and honest. I've never understood why someone gets upset about asking about the dollars and cents in an industry that we all admit is full of expenses. So
Yeah.
just ask the question. Don't be afraid. Don't be a dick about it. And
Mhm.
understand that it has to be equitable. When I was winning world championships, they would cover a plane ticket. They would cover an Airbnb. And usually, by the way, I had to pay for it up front, and they would reimburse me when I gave them the cost.
Mhm.
So that way they knew it wasn't a hamstring type situation. I had paid for it. But the understanding of, hey, um, I'm coming to your show, so can you cover these expenses for me? Again, you're not Andrew Jacked, right? You're not Chris Bumstead. You're not, Derek Lunsford. So it really comes down to you also have to mitigate what you feel is an equitable response to that question and not be a fucking asshole about it.
Yeah, you have to be realistic with like what value you're actually bringing. And sometimes like that doesn't have to be you're the top dog. Like
No.
and this advice also is true domestically for those US athletes. Like I have done this where I've had promoters, they aren't in the business anymore. I've had promoters reach out and say like, "Hey, I see you're competing. I saw you compete at this show. You're kind of geographically close. Like I need one more person to hit a pro card at this show." Cool. That's my value to you. Like I may not
Right.
win the pro card, but you need a body on that stage so that you can hand out a pro card so that you can say that you are a pro qualifying show, cover my registration, cover that, whatever. And that for them, they're losing money, but like it's kind of a wash because it didn't necessarily come out of their pocket, for some of these services, some of these things, or like,
And I would argue too, how many of those athletes that were in that to get the pro card are going to find out that there isn't 4 to 5 and you can't get the pro card and go, oh, well, then I'll cross over into something else. And they leave. Now there's only one athlete. And now as a promoter, I have to go, okay, do I put the one guy up by himself or do I put the age restricted categories on stage at the same time so it looks a little fuller? I'm a promoter. I know what we want. We want full divisions. We want to help you. If we can't, we'll just say, "Hey, listen, you're not at that point in your career. We don't have that kind of cash. I don't really feel that the, give and take is worth that in terms of a response, but there's always an opportunity. Just ask."
yeah, absolutely. And you brought up Lee Kemp, and like he's a great example because I know for a fact when he was the head of the UK DFBA, which he has now stepped down, Christian is in charge. But when he was in charge of the UK DFBA, he funded the vast majority of his team's international travel, which
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, the way it should be. I know some people will say like, "Oh, financially we can't do that." I think you should find a way to do that.
Yep.
If you're a promoter, if you're an organization executive, like you owe it to the athletes. Like they're the ones that are keeping your organization afloat. But that's again another soapbox that I could go on and on and on about.
Another episode by itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's the federation itself, and we know that sponsorships. Heck, you sponsor Natty News Daily. The value there is kind of like is it valuable, or are we just like helping each other out, scratching each other's backs? I think when the younger athletes get in the industry, myself included, when I was younger, it was like I'm going to get a sponsorship. They're going to give me all my supplements. They're going to pay me this money. I think those days are dead unless you are like the Andrew Jacked, the Chris Bumstead. Like no one's paying a salary unless you are like consistently converting at a very high level where it's just a prediction of like this guy's going to make the company this amount of money every single month. Therefore,
And,
here's a percentage of it.
and I would argue we killed it as athletes. We killed it because the problem is that too many people would come to me at my seminars and go, hey, I'm trying to get sponsored by XYZ. And I go, cool, show me a portfolio. And they go, what do you mean? And I go, you're a product.
Mhm.
Now, that's not me offending you and or me saying, hey, you shouldn't ask for this. What I'm telling you is, what do you think a sponsorship is?
Mhm.
They're using you for your likeness, your intelligence, your vision in terms of where you think you're going to be. They're using you to advertise their product.
Yep.
If you're not good enough to advertise with, what good are you to them? And so
Yep.
for me, I will admit that because of who I was and because of what I did on my pedigree and who I knew, I got sponsorships I probably shouldn't have got. And there were times where I sat alone in my room in this office and been like, am I really converting my value to them? Like, ugh.
Mhm.
And that made me feel uncomfortable simply because I don't like to take something for nothing. And so I would try to give them ideas. I would try to do certain things. And one that comes to mind was the water company that sponsored my podcast and sponsored my World's Strongest Everyman YouTube channel was they wanted to take a bet on me. And it started to work, but then the company got sold and the new company's vision was something different. And it was just, I literally was like emailing somebody one day and then they were off to the races. Another one, I had asked some companies to sponsor World's Strongest Everyman. And fuck it. We're far enough removed now because it was in the middle of COVID. Titan fitness equipment agreed they wanted to be a part of it, and it would have been a huge help and would have left me a bigger budget to make more episodes and actually take it even further. And it would have looked a lot like Martine Sleacy's YouTube channel now called Strength Unknown. And they agreed and then fucking ghosted me. So I taped over every piece of Titan equipment in my gym and switched to Rogue as much as possible, where I purchased, either secondhand or when they had like sales. And every time when I went to Iceland and trained at Haptor's gym, it was all Rogue. And I was like, don't get me wrong. Would I have blown up their business? I don't know. But because our visions didn't add up at the same time, neither of us got a chance to take advantage of it. And it just kind of fell to the wayside. So all in all, I'm still fucking pissed at you, Titan. You said yes. You could have just fucking buckled down and it given me $100 gift card if you really wanted to. But that's the only one I'm pretty salty about because we went back and forth for months and they said, get us a shopping list and we'll send you some. Then they just fucking ghosted me.
That's rough.
Tag
Yeah,
them in the
because that,
comments section. You tag them in the comments section. Cut this up and make it its own reel. I'll share it.
that's going to be the 15-second reel. You just like ran
Please.
against Titan. They're like, wait a second, weren't we talking about international travel? Like, what's he doing?
Sorry. We were started talking about money and you guys just cut it
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
But you're a
So
product, is essentially what I'm saying. And if you can't be utilized, then why are you asking people for sponsorships, right? If you have not one major title or a viral social media following,
Sam
don't
Sulek.
don't go to a sponsor. You want private sponsors. You want to talk to you know what I mean? Yeah.
So let's talk that because that's kind of where I was going with this. These big sponsorships that you think are going to happen are not going to happen, but there are people that know you and want to support you. So that's your local sponsorships, the mom and pop shop, and you see this in a lot of other sports. Like I work at like rehabbing a lot of MMA fighters. Every fight camp they have, they come out with new T-shirts for it. They wear them in their walkout, and they've got like 18 different random small mom and pop companies that have thrown them a couple $100 or whatever. Honestly, in my opinion, that's the way that the athlete, if the athlete wants to do it themselves, that's the way you got to do it. I've seen it be successful, right? Like it just gets a little bit dicey because now you're dealing with apparel and ordering this stuff and that stuff. But like we could figure it out, right? It's not that hard. Like sponsor my 2027 competitive season. I'll put your logo on the back. I'll tag you in my Instagram. And like if they don't get that much value out of it, it's not the end of the world because it was $100 commitment to help out their friend that they know, right?
And realistically, it's wholesale cost, so it's probably half of that. You know what I mean?
hmm Yeah. So that's honestly the way that if I were to advise an athlete, like, hey, I need to fundraise some money, and I've seen some of my actual athletes on my roster do this well. Like, this is a business that I support. I come here all the time, like, IV drips, sauna places, supplement shops. Go to your local supplement shop if you buy local. If you're in
If you don't
Connecticut.
go to bgnutritioncenter.com and use code Natty News.
And indeed, yeah, um, yeah. If you're buying local and you're like a face that they know, just ask. Just like you said, like you won't get a yes unless you ask. And it may not be something massive, but you do that with 10 different companies, you get a little bit of money. Now all of a sudden, $100 10 times, there's your ticket, right? There's your flight across the to the UK, to Denmark, to wherever, Italy, and that's a massive part of your expenses covered by people that want to see you succeed.
And I would argue the only caveat I have to that, and I did it for about 5 minutes and then I deleted it. I didn't even if I remember right, I actually sent the money back. Please, please don't be that person that every fucking 6 hours spams a GoFundMe page.
Yeah.
Listen, this is our job. I understand that. But I have a hobby that I've been doing since the eighth grade. And I think I've said this on a couple of podcasts. If you don't know, I'm a huge Magic the Gathering player. When I say huge, I mean in the frame right now, I'm building a deck just off. I love this fucking game. My collection is so large, it's on my homeowner's insurance. I love this game. If I wanted to be a professional Magic the Gathering player, and I said to my friends, but I need to buy the new Secret Lair drop, and it costs $250 for a booster pack of collector booster box. I need to fund this if I'm going to build a good enough deck. Put money into this account. Realistically, what I just said to them is please pay for my card gaming addiction, right? I know that it's a bastardization of it, but not really. Because for
Yeah.
most people, this isn't going to be your full-time job. So essentially, what you're doing is asking people to fund your hobby. It's cool if they can use you as a product. It's not cool if you're asking your friend from high school who hasn't talked to you in 6 months to put $10 in a GoFundMe so that you can go, pose in front of five guys from Long Island, but they're in Italy this time. You know what I mean? Like, please don't do that. I've
Yeah.
always hated that. I've always
The
been against
the
that.
GoFundMe, like it serves its purpose, and its purpose is like emergencies.
Yes,
Fortunately, in the US, medical bills,
sure.
emergencies, injuries, all that. Yeah. Again, I know we could,
Yep.
there's so many
Yep.
opportunities. Um, but yeah, this is a hobby. This is a passion project. Please don't. GoFundMe is not the proper route for that. But like if you are funding a company with your like if I am supporting a company myself financially by buying their product, utilizing their services, it is then justifiable to ask for something in return if you're willing to market, advertise, and support them in other ways.
Mm.
But like I said, there has to be some value there, and that value might be low, but every little thing adds up. So, yeah.
Mm.
So we've covered, is it feasible? We've covered some of like the big picture sponsorship opportunities. If you are like one of these top athletes, we've covered like how the little guy does it. Where are we missing? And in my opinion, this is the question that probably needs to be addressed most. How do we change the culture in the US so that more people are chasing this? Because if the athletes start to want it, ask for it, do it, the federations have to take notice, right? Like it's just it's a a domino effect there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would argue this too, right? The amount of people that you and I speak with that are athletes that say, and no shade to anybody that's ever said this, because I understand how important it is to really grow the sport and to make it this next level thing. I get it. Believe me, I got it, guys. I get it. I want to get paid too. Sorry, my dog is just throwing my swords around. Um, Here's the thing, okay? If what you want is to grow the sport and grow as an athlete, to think that you're only going to do it in your backyard is crazy.
Yep.
Alternatively, everybody says, I wish the shows were bigger. I wish the fanfare was better. I wish the production quality was bigger. Why? Why would a promoter do that when you're only going to drive 20 minutes to compete in their show? Plus, why the fuck do I care at all what you have to say if you've basically told me as a promoter I might travel to Worlds if it's within 3 states? If
Mhm.
it's not, I'm basically just going to do the same 3 shows for the next 6 years until I retire. If what you're
And
saying
I'm going to compete every 3 years, so you're going to get my money. Well,
and
150.
I'm going to complain about how expensive it is while I do it.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, it's not that those bullet points are not valid. It is expensive. It is a pain in the ass. It does take up a vast majority of your life. So if what you're saying is this hobby is expensive, it's time consuming, and all in all, it's look, whether or not you're doing it for money, it can be pretty self serving. If you want more out of the sport, you're not going to get it by just watering in a pot. You have to actually go to the flower bed and make it worth their while too to grow.
Mhm.
So if what you're saying is you want to see change in the industry, change the way that you're thinking. No one is going to want you, and no one's going to reach out to you if the last 3 world championships you've told them to go fuck themselves and you're not going to travel to them. Then they're going to stop reaching out to you. And if
Mhm.
you have very valid criticism, but you've never traveled out of your tri-state area to compete, no federation head is going to go, man, well, Mary Poppins said that we should have LED boards. Will you come to our show, Mary, if we have LED boards? Oh, no, of course not. I live in Ohio and you're in California.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, then never mind. And then that'll be the end of it. Like, you have to understand there is a give and take here. And if you're not willing to give, then they are just going to take. And then that'll be the end of it. And no one wants to listen to you. Hell, 5 people in the world probably want to listen to me, but I somehow keep getting on podcasts and getting a microphone in front of me. And it's simply because of the experience. So even as a coach, it has helped me. I've trained people in Italy, I've trained people in Hungary. I've had my tickets paid for to go to Hungary, UK, France, Spain, right? All of those fun vacations were because I knew how to help them when they were traveling internationally. And by the way, Hungary, Italy, and Canada, I've trained athletes virtually. All of
Hmm.
those other countries I mentioned, I was going with them as their coach, and they paid my way to go. So even
Hmm.
as a coach, I had my way paid to go. And then the federation would cover a little bit if I was doing their pro show as a judge or something like that. So the reason I bring that up is just to say if what you want to see is bigger shows and you want your federation that wasn't listed here or that we did mention that doesn't have international shows to think it's worth it, you've got to make it worth it for them. If
Hmm.
you don't think that federation is worth your money to make it worth it, that's a federation problem. It's not a you traveling problem. A passport's $130, and if you really wanted to get overseas, 700 to 800 bucks to get to Europe, and then you could buy $100 tickets here or there, or let's say $2,000 round trip. Sure, that's a ton of money. Don't lie to me like you're not going to spend that when you go to Worlds in California. Come on, that's a lie. You literally could go compete in Spain, and it would be just as cheap as a very expensive world level show in the United States. It just is.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. It seems easier when it's within the US, but in reality, it's not. Like you said, it's the same distance to travel. It's going to be the same expenses. Maybe there's not a language barrier, but heck, I mean, look at some of the dialects in the US. There probably still is.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, and here's the thing too, like Natty News as a group knows this firsthand that like there are so many people that will sit and say like it can't happen, it's never happened, that's not the way things are done. That's what we heard when we started asking about like, hey, live commentary, right? We need to have
Yeah.
streams. We need to have live commentary. And in a period of, I forget when we went to Denmark. I mean, we Mr. America started bringing us in. We did live commentary for 2 years, and then we got the call from Daniel in Denmark. It was like, hey, I'm flying you guys out. You guys are doing live commentary for the European Championships. No one had done it before us, other than like Joe with the ANBF because he was already at the show and they threw him a mic, and there were some small companies within the US doing it, but it wasn't the standard, it wasn't the norm, and now it's slowly becoming that because somebody said we should do this and asked for it and made it happen. And then people took a chance on them because we provided value with our marketing, our advertising, our reach. The same thing can be said with athletes, organizations, even coaching teams trying to travel abroad, right? Go
Mm.
do it, ask for it, get some support, be the first one to do it, set that standard, and then it's going to get easier every single time you do it. Once it's like, hey, we've done this, we brought this. And if you're bringing a team, there's your value, right? Like you bring 10 athletes to any given show anywhere in the world, that promoter is going to respect that, appreciate that, and ask for you to come back. And now you have a door in.
And not only that, when you some of those people, like you said, that I met will now vouch for me to other people
Hmm.
where, I can remember probably, I think it was like the 20, probably 17 or 18 Olympia in Las Vegas that when the New Zealand heads came in, Brandon, how's it go? Oh, here's South Korea. Here's China. Here's, the UK, Spain, France, their delegations. Their athletes would then come up to me and ask me questions about competing and what they should do to come to the United States. Those people who vouched for me then when they had bigger shows were like, hey, have Brandon come to guest pose.
Hmm.
Even within the United States, Mark Torriello, who runs the Mr. America, has asked me to guest pose at his shows. And my wife went pro on his stage when he had it in New Jersey for the East Coast, Eastern USAs
Hmm.
many years back. So it really comes down to the fact that I'm not saying leverage everybody for everything, or you have to look at every relationship you have as going, how is this going to benefit me? Instead, understand that this is a multifaceted, multi jointed venture for you as an athlete that is going to pay dividends in ways that you don't yet understand. And
Yep.
having photos, and by the way, I would always figure out if I liked the official photographer for these places, and I would schedule a photo shoot the day after the show. That portfolio of I've got shots at Red Rocks Canyon. I've got shots in the Grand Canyon. I've got shots in Australia, in Brisbane. I've got shots in like random broken down buildings in Germany. I've got photos outside the Eiffel Tower in Paris. I've got photos from Finland where I'm in the snow. Like those wound up in magazines. And
Hmm.
the photographers who share them, other photographers reached out to me and asked me to travel just to do photo shoots with them. It pays off in dividends that you don't yet understand.
Hmm.
If you don't think that you have the money to gamble to see how that's going to pay off. Don't go broke trying to keep up with the Jones. That's not what we're saying. What
Hmm.
we are saying is if you have the ability and the want to be a world level athlete, no world level athlete becomes a world level athlete only competing in Southern Indiana.
Yep.
No world level athlete has only won their local show in Massachusetts. And when you do it once and you realize the scariness of it is just kind of, hey, I hope my flight doesn't get canceled and I hope I don't get food poisoning. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
And I would argue, I don't know if I'm going to ruffle feathers by saying this. If you think other countries aren't right now looking at the United States and wondering the same shit that you guys have been wondering for 10 years about it being safe, am I going to get a visa? Are they going to kick me out? Am I going to have a problem? They're now doing the same thing to us.
Hmm.
So we're now not even unique snowflakes in the sense of, well, we're the safe haven. So it really
Yep.
comes down to if what you want is to get your name, your likeness, your ability out there. And by the way, call yourself the best in the world, right? You
Hmm.
got to go. You got to go to the rest of the world. We've been making fun of the NFL about this for years. How could you be a world champion when there's no teams outside the United States? At least in the World Series, you have people from other countries that are playing on U.S. teams, and baseball's huge in the Dominican Republic. It's huge in Japan. Bodybuilding is huge everywhere, but
Yep.
football is really only huge in the United States. So how do you have a world championship? You should ask yourself the same thing as an athlete. If you're competing at the world level, you can't say, I'm the best in the world. When I competed as an amateur, first year classic physique came around in South Korea. The short classic physique class had 28.
Hmm.
And then I still had to go up in the overall against the guy who won in the tall to win it. And I did. Just saying. The problem becomes I know that I beat the best they threw at me. When I
Hmm.
went to European championships, the overall that year wasn't even just by bodybuilding or classic. They put every overall winner into a pose down and then
Yep.
judged them against their division's criteria to issue the overall. I won
Hmm.
that too. The problem becomes if you want to be a world champion, compete against the world, not the world as you see it in northern Texas. It's
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that could be a criticism of even some of the federations because the naming of like everything's a world championship and then
yeah.
like, all right, cool, you have two affiliates or at one point you had zero affiliates, not naming any certain federations, which will now ban me or block me again. But
I'm still blocked too.
yeah, I mean,
I'm going to one of their shows
I love how
this
you
week.
immediately knew who I was
Of
talking
course I
about.
do.
Me
They're the
saying
only federation that would do that. Why are you going to ban very well-known coaches with a mouthpiece?
oh God. Oh, it's hilarious. So funny. Anyway, I think do you have time for like one more question?
Sure.
I know we're up on an hour here. I can't end the podcast without asking about your own competitive aspirations because I want to see you back up on stage, see if you can knock the rust off and do it again. Where's your head at with that? I know you're busy, you got multiple businesses, you got the
Yeah.
kids now, but you still been training, you're still
Yeah.
doing the thing.
Yeah. What's really funny is, first of all, I've said this to my power lifters and strongman, especially when I was on camera for strongman. Bodybuilding made me who I am, and it really is probably one of the most transformative things in my life outside of the military and then becoming a dad, right? But certain parts of the fitness industry are more fun to do, and powerlifting and strongman as a whole, and even just to go watch it, is more fun, right?
Mhm.
But that's not even part of it. For me, when I was competing at that level, and for 4 years nobody beat me, was because at that point in time it was the most important thing to me. For
Yep.
me to do what I do at that level, this has to be the most important thing to me. And
Mhm.
with two kids under 5 and my wife now travel or not traveling but her aspirations wanting to branch out in the fitness industry, and she's becoming a drummer, and I want her, who the person who let me follow my dreams for 7 years, to follow her dreams even if all it is to come upstairs and train on the drums for 2 hours. And I
Mhm.
want my kids to know that if they have a parent teacher conference, I'm going to be there. And, you know, uh, I'll actually say this out loud to you. I haven't even told you this. I tore my bicep a couple of years ago. It's fully repaired. And in that reparative time, on the left side of my body. And this will get answered tomorrow. So this podcast will probably be out after I already have an answer. There's a lump as a man in my breast. In my left breast, underneath my nipple, I have a lump in my pec. I now need a mammogram to go make sure that I don't have cancer. Now, if anybody knows anything about men's breast cancer, it's a very, very, very rare thing. Like 1% wind up getting it. I don't think that's what it is, but that's vastly more important for me to answer than, hey, and I had somebody call me up 2 weeks ago and go, hey, I want you to compete in Shanghai, China in later on in the year. And I was like, my kid's birthday is in June, and that's around the time of the show. I have a medical issue I'm trying to fix. I just don't think that's really smart right now. And they were like, well, listen, you're one of our best, and you're this, and you're the greatest. And I go, I really appreciate that. I'm not in the headspace to silence everything else going on in my life and spend 80 minutes on a piece of cardio equipment when I need to shred while all of that stuff is going on. And I do want to get back on stage. I posted a thing on Instagram not too long ago. It said, I never fucking said I was retired. And I meant
Yeah.
that. But in the same sense, if I have other things going on, whether or not I could step on stage is not the answer. It's not going to be my best showing. And I've only ever stepped on stage half ready twice. And I've regretted both of them. Where I did
Yeah.
one as a favor to a federation where they were like, we need more people. I'll show up. And the other one was at the end of a season, I planned too many shows and I literally couldn't peak correctly. My body was just so tired.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time, I would change those and I wouldn't do those. So if that's the case, I'm not going to give myself another regrettable showing just because someone invited me. I need to be focused on making it the best of the best again, and I just can't do that right now. So that's literally the only hurdle is just if this is going to be the best of me, then I have to give it all of me. And just right now, my kids, my wife, and my health are more important.
Yeah. And I think most people would agree like that's very justifiable, right? But it's also that same headspace of like you are a competitive athlete. You are not
Yeah.
someone who just wants to show up and compete. And maybe that's different for some people. Maybe, hey, I'm just gonna, I'll do a rushed prep just because I kind of want to do this show. I want to compete with this person. I want to be on stage at this event for whatever reason, whether it's a region or like you said, a group of people competing you want to compete with. And that's fine too. But for those that are like, I gotta be the best, I can't regress with my physique, it's a different mindset. So
And by the way,
there's a
all the
place for
things,
both of those.
we'll wrap this up in terms of like a whole package. The reason I feel that way, because people ask me all the time, man, you were running the division. You don't get the itch. And I go, listen, people who get the itch after taking a break are because they feel they missed out. They have FOMO. They have, I didn't reach my full potential. So they feel they missed the bus, so to speak, right? I didn't miss the bus. I drove the fucking bus. For 4 straight years, it was me in the driver's seat, and everybody else was sitting down, and I was like, keep it down back there, man. So I want to say that with this podcast, there's a reason I brought that up.
Mhm.
Because I did all of the things. When my kids were born and people said, man, you would travel to 4 or 5 countries a year. You're not itching to get out there? Nah, I seen all the things. I've been to countries that don't exist anymore. I've been to heritage sites that have since burned down or been, reclassified into something else. And in terms of bodybuilding, I set the goals, I got them, and I took them from other people.
Mhm.
I don't have the itch because I did those things. If you feel that, this is your calling. Go to
Mhm.
another country and see what it's like to compete against people who are the best at what they do
Yep.
further away from you. Invite them to do the same on your home stage. Move this world the way that it has moved you to want to compete, right? Take it other places, take it to new heights. But the new heights can't just be the next floor. Sometimes you got to switch buildings, guys, and sometimes those buildings are in another country. And if you want, you can message me and I'll tell you why it should be in Iceland because Iceland is awesome.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up, though. A little bit of brevity, but also a great message there. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. You got to change things up. You can't just compete in the same way you've competed and expect things to change, or to expect your understanding of the sport to change, right? Because man, there's a lot of talent out there. And we do a great job, I think, trying to cover it as Natty News Daily and all these other, bodybuilding down under and the other organizations. But there's just so much talent that's untapped, and you won't see it and you won't experience it. And that's the thing. Like, I want more athletes to experience what I've been able to experience, not even
Yeah.
as an athlete, just as a commentator, because it is motivating to see how other countries do it, how other organizations do it, because there's yeah, there's
Man, when I went to compete against those Australians, dude, and I won my second universe title, arguably with my best physique ever in Brisbane, Australia.
Mhm,
And when I saw these open bodybuilders, I was like, how are we the same thing? Like,
mhm,
if an alien came down and just was like, all right, you're one thing and you're a different thing, right? We're not the same humans. It's crazy.
yeah,
And then when they show up to the Natural Olympia, it's like, how did you manage to keep that
mhm,
all the way over? And I'm sure that's another episode where we do tips and tricks to keep your peak while you're traveling. But he's right, guys. You don't know what the best look like until you really see them in person.
yeah, yeah. And it is a whole different level at certain places. So yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this episode up at that. I know we could talk for forever, but for those that have made it through the whole episode, made it through our rambles and our rants, Brandon, where can the listeners, the viewers, find you?
Sure. So find me any day, all day on Instagram at BGF underscore Lirio. You can message my supplement stores or see what we have to offer at bgnutritioncenter.com or BGN underscore CT on Instagram. If you're looking for coaching or any advice in terms of posing or prep, things like that, you can find my coaching at bgfitonline.com or just feel free to message me on any of those platforms and I'd be happy to help you out.
And if you're looking for supplements, check them out. Use code Natty News Daily. NND is the actual code there for some discounts on your subs, and support a small business, veteran-owned business, and support us as well, right? So that's what's really important. Um, so if you like the episode, guys, like, subscribe, follow, share, click things, notifications, buzzwords, whatever. I will see you guys in the next episode.